Good evening, folks, and welcome to Setting Up Compost at Home. I'm Josh. I'm an Orange County Library System event planner, and today we're going to be hearing from Charlie from O-Town Compost. Um, Before we get started, I wanted to go over a couple of things just to say before the event. This project was made possible in part by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. They helped us with some of the stuff to live stream online, so thank you very much. And just wanted to also let you know that this is part of the NEA Big Read series, which is a program from the National Endowment of Arts in partnership with Art Midwest. This year, we're the Orange County Library System, in partnership with Valencia College, are celebrating the book Lab Girl by Hope Jaron. We have tons of great virtual events coming to you starting back on March 28th. We've had some great events already, but it goes all the way until April 24th. If you want to see more information on that, please go to ocls.info/big read, and you can see all the great events that we're coming up with, including this one. So, like I said, this is Setting Up Compost at Home with Charlie Pioli. Charlie is the founder and owner of O-Town Compost, a community composting service in Orlando area. If you are new to compost or wanting to get into it, Charlie is going to be showing us a lot of different ways to get started. So without any further ado, let me welcome on Charlie. Hey, Charlie, how you doing?
Hey Josh, thank you for handing it off and welcome everyone. This presentation is going to be a bit about backyard composting for you backyard composters, vermicomposting if anyone's interested in starting their own worm bin, as well as something that's near and dear to me, which is community composting. And that is what O-Town Compost falls under as a small community business that is recycling food waste and supporting the local food system by creating compost.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to you. If you folks have any questions throughout the event, please post those in the comments, and we'll get with Charlie when he's ready and finish with the presentation. So thanks again, and I'll talk to you later.
Okay, yeah, you can find us at otowncompost.com. That's where we have a lot of our information. Uh, O-Town Compost, I started it about just over a year ago. We're full service residential and commercial food waste pickups, as well as we compost it back at we have two composting sites on either end of Orange County, which makes for food waste recycling infrastructure, something that the Orlando metro area really lacked up until O-Town Compost was founded. They did have one anaerobic digester at Disney, but that shut its doors for good, which pretty much only leaves us as the food waste recyclers. We do zero waste events, birthday parties, weddings, you name it, office, service, where they generate a lot of coffee grounds and paper filters. And as you can see in the bottom photo, this is kind of the style of the composting method we use, which is, I like to say, mid-scale. It's more advanced than a backyard composting pile, but not quite up to the same level as you might find on like a 10-acre composting facility. It's called an aerated static pile, and oxygen is forced into the pile, which speeds up the decomposition, really limiting any odors. And the greatest thing of all, there's no turning involved. I don't have to get in there with a pitchfork. In about 2 months, you get finished compost. Because the key to composting, and I'll say this again later when I'm demonstrating my backyard pile, but the key to composting is oxygen. And if your pile isn't getting oxygen, it's going to start to smell and go anaerobic. And anaerobic, it basically means without oxygen. So that's why this pile is aerobic. The reason, oh, So I started O-Town Compost after 3 years as a solid waste consultant, where I was traveling around the country, and I was, traveling to landfills, incinerators, recycle centers all over the country, where I was witnessing, the way our country handles its waste firsthand. And I was just getting pretty depressed seeing these transfer trailers and dump trucks dump on the face of the landfill from sun up to sundown. And I was going to recycle centers. And at that time, I thought standard recycling of bottles, cans, and paper was, a great solution to managing our solid waste. But I was witnessing high contamination rates where the recycle stream wasn't clean. A lot of it wasn't necessarily getting recycled, and what was getting baled and shipped around the world only to be remanufactured and sent back to the United States. So I started to question how many environmental benefits are in recycling really. I came from Boston, where I was a college student, and I had been a subscriber for a similar community composting service there in Boston. And that's what I've kind of mimicked O-Town Compost off of. And the reason I kind of diverted my attention to composting is organic waste makes up the bulk of what we're sending to the landfill. Orange County landfill, you're talking about 350,000 tons each year of organic waste, stuff that can be composted. And you'll see this infographic kind of shows that the bulk of it is food scraps, and that's wasted food, wasted edible food, but also just trimmings, banana peels, coffee grounds, stuff that has been used, but there's still organic waste that is rich in nutrients and doesn't deserve to go to the landfill. And for those who aren't familiar with a landfill, I would highly recommend touring your local landfill, or just driving in to get a glimpse. But at the landfill, they dump this trash onto the face of the landfill, and every day, by law, they have to cover the trash with a 6-inch layer of dirt, which suppresses any odors and just kind of it's kind of the management practice. But the problem with that is it cuts off all the oxygen to the trash, and a lot of it is organic. So you're essentially mummifying this organic waste, and in that anaerobic environment without oxygen, you're creating methane, which is many times more potent of a greenhouse gas than just regular carbon. And it's true that your backyard compost pile does create CO2, but once you have finished composting and have a stabilized product, it's actually sequestering carbon from the atmosphere and storing it. So I just, thought community composting is the way to go because you're keeping the material local. You're not, shipping it across the world. Where a lot of community composters do collection on their bicycles. I didn't really see that as feasible in Orlando. But at most we're picking up with a pickup truck or a cargo van, and making sure that where our environmental benefits are actually, true. I think the second, like, our mission statement is to divert as much organic waste from Orange County landfill, but the second half of our mission statement is to support the local food system. And by doing this, we're creating soil amendment and compost. And if you talk to any farmer or urban farmer in Orlando, they'll tell you there's we're in a soil crisis. There's not enough compost out there. Despite all the organic waste that's going to the landfill, it's hard for people to find compost or something to amend their soil with, creating nutrients and healthy soil that their plants can grow up and be healthy in. We partner with Fleet Farming and For Roots, a number of community gardens in the Orlando area who receive compost donations every once in a while. Actually, our subscribers receive 40 pounds of finished compost every year, but some of our subscribers don't really have a backyard if they live in an apartment, or they don't have use for the compost, so they can choose to donate their share to an organization like Fleet Farming. And yeah, as a one in the millennial generation, I think growing food is the key to self sufficiency, and if we can kind of break our dependence on the industrial food system, which has proven not to be very sustainable, and we're shipping stuff across the country from California, Mexico. I feel like we can really have a lot more resilience as a community. Just briefly, commercial scale composting is different than what we're doing here at O-Town Compost on a much larger scale. And I'm originally from Portland, Oregon. Last time I was out there, I visited the commercial composting site out there. I mean, it's beautiful. It's awesome what they're doing. They're able to compost, thousands of tons every year. At the same time, there's plastics become an issue. There's a lot more contamination, and it's just kind of a cultural thing out in cities like Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Austin, Texas, places that actually give their residents a curbside composting bin. And the community composters is kind of in contrast. We're micro haulers, as I like to call us. We operate with pickup trucks or bicycles. We keep the material hyper local, and we you can start a compost pile in a community garden, or like a schoolyard. And oftentimes, community composters will just partner with an urban farm and bring their food scraps that they collect from their customers straight to the farmer, who then incorporates it into their rows. I think I started a podcast called the Community Composting Podcast, and you can find that on any podcast platform you listen to, but it's really the voice of the grassroots movement of community composting. And this map shows where, the pins are where there's community composters, but this is probably only a fourth of the actual community composters. I feel like on Instagram, I'm seeing a new one pop up every day. And yeah, I go in, interview the community composter, and I hope it's providing, inspiration to the other community composters out there in the country, and just knowledge, because oftentimes it's people who, don't have a background in solid waste. They're just very passionate, and they learn as they go. But that passion keeps their drive, and they really divert a significant amount of organic waste from the landfill. One of the community composters I look up to is Bootstrap Compost, based out of Boston. I used to be their subscriber when I lived there, and they've grown amazingly in the last decade. They have over 2,000 residential subscribers. They bring their food scraps to a few local farmers in the Boston, area, and they've managed to expand down to Providence, Rhode Island, really giving millions of people access to composting. People who don't necessarily may live in small apartments or condos, and maybe don't have the time or want to spend the effort doing it in their backyard. Rust Belt Riders, these guys are really cool. I hope to have them on my podcast. They're based in Cleveland, Ohio, and they divert an amazing amount of food waste every year from the Ohio landfills. And these guys, actually have a microscope and can put their soil samples under the microscope and tell you about the biology of what you're looking at. You know, the for someone like myself, I believe that the more life in your compost, the more bacteria and microbes that are active in your compost, the better. You know, though microbes are I like to call them taxis that bring nutrients to the plant roots. So, you know, the more taxis and transportation for those nutrients, the healthier your plants are going to be at the end of the day. And this last bullet is actually not true. I thought they were, the rumor in the community composting industry was that they were partnering with a black soldier fly larva company based out of Canada. And you know, if you're a composter in Florida, you know black soldier fly larvae. They're the most voracious food waste recyclers, and you know they're just nature recycling food waste. But they're a little bit gross to look at, and you might recoil in fear if you see them in your pile. Big Reuse, another amazing community composter in New York City. New York City, ironically, doesn't have a lot of composting going on, despite being a city of 8 million people. They have such a huge amount of waste going out of the city every day. They actually load it onto trains and train like by rail, bring it down as far south as like South Carolina, just to remove it from the city because they don't have a landfill or incinerator in the city. It would make sense for them to compost their organic waste locally, turn it into soil amendment, and then grow food in urban farms, or at the very least fertilize the trees lining the streets. But Big Reuse, it manages to compost 15 tons of food scraps every week, and they're located right under the Queensboro Bridge in a very dense urban area. So the way they don't get any odor complaints is they use this Gore blanket. It's a blanket that goes over the pile. It manages to give the pile plenty of oxygen. It breathes, but it traps the moisture, retains moisture, and also suppresses any foul odors from like ammonia, or if there are anaerobic pockets or anything like that. And the last composter I'll mention is LA Compost. If you haven't seen the documentary about soil health, Kiss the Ground, it's on Netflix and I would highly recommend it. It's really inspiring about, regenerative agriculture and, the movement that's happening around the country with sustainable farms. What LA Compost, based in Los Angeles, is featured in the documentary, and they have a really cool system where it's a decentralized network of community gardens, schools, and churches. And no one, it's free to compost. People just have to bring their food scraps to their local drop off center. And I think they have to sign up for a couple hours each month of labor to help turn the piles. And it really brings the community together around this topic of compost, urban farming. And yeah, it's great education. So now I'll stop right there because we're kind of shifting into different. Josh, do you have any questions that I should answer right now? Is that a no? Okay, I'll proceed. So now we're getting into the information for you backyard composters. And you'll see in this picture that I started O-Town Compost with just a pallet bay, like a palleted bay system, where I had 3 bays built by pallets. And the first pallet all the way to the left was where I had my active pile going. And then as soon as that, I felt like that had composted fully, I would move it to the rightmost bay. And that's where I would store the finished compost. And then, the cycle repeated. But the thing with pallet bays, you got to make sure you're in there with a pitchfork, you're turning the pile, and it was definitely a lot of labor on my back. So that's why I was really excited to start the ASP bins. Tumblers is a very popular backyard composting method, and tumblers, yeah, they definitely mix the browns with the greens. They mix them homogenously, which that's a key piece of advice. Is you don't want to like layer your browns and greens. You want to make sure they're like thoroughly mixed together, because nitrogen has to interact with carbon in order to activate the bacteria and start the decomposition process. The thing about tumblers is, they're like batch composters. So, when you fill one up, you can't just keep adding material in there. And if you're like me, you're constantly generating food scraps every day. So, you know, maybe you have two tumblers, one, so you're never like going without an area to compost your food scraps. City of Orlando provides these black plastic bins, and I used to have one in my backyard. They're called earth machines. They're not my favorite bins because they don't offer a lot of aeration. They have a couple slits on the side. They have a lid. I would always keep my lid off to give more aeration and let the rain fall in, because you need a moisture content for your compost pile of about 50 to 60%. When you take compost in your hand and squeeze it in your hand, a good rule of thumb is that compost should, one or two drops of water should fall out. That is the rule of thumb to know that you have the right moisture content. And when I had these City of Orlando bins in the backyard, they were drying out and ants would get into the piles. Composting trenches is where you simply dig trenches and just um, bury your food waste. And that's a great way to kind of like improve your soil, but at the same time it's kind of mimicking the landfill, burying your waste and shutting off the oxygen so it becomes anaerobic. I know some people who another anaerobic method is, mixing your carbon, your browns with your food scraps, your greens, and mixing them homogeneously, wetting them down with your hose, and then tightly wrapping a tarp over them and securing the tarp. You wait about 2 months, and you should have, close to finished compost under the tarp when you remove it. The Japanese method of composting is kind of like a fermentation process, and it is also anaerobic method. There's these community composters in San Antonio, Texas, called the Compost Queens. This is the method that they use, and they essentially give their subscribers a 5-gallon bucket and a bag of brand of bokashi grain, and the subscribers are instructed to fill up their bucket with their food scraps, sprinkle a little grain in it, like this special type of bran, and secure the bucket lid so there's no oxygen flow. You wait about 2 weeks, a week and a half. And when you lift up the lid, it won't be that stinky anaerobic smell, but it'll be like a sweet fermentation smell. And it will really, is rich in microbes and bacteria. And, as a gardener, you just dig that into your beds, and it really, um, gives the garden a boost of energy with all that microbes. I briefly want to talk about odors and pests because as a composter, those are, big hurdles. I feel like if you're composting properly, as I learned to do, you're not gonna be facing either, odor or pest. You're probably gonna get black soldier flies even if you're doing the composting properly. But by properly, I mean having that moisture content proper, mixing your browns with your greens homogeneously, and making sure there's plenty of oxygen flow. When you have those criteria set, your pile is going to heat up and really start, it's going to be hot. And over that 131 degrees Fahrenheit is the threshold where you're killing the pathogens, the weed seeds, and fly larvae, which is why at O-Town Compost, we can take meat, dairy, um, eggshells, paper towels, napkins. A lot of these things I wouldn't recommend for a backyard composter because, there's management involved, and you don't want to risk having like pathogens in the compost that you might then go and use in your raised bed. So yeah, those are the things. Also, pests are not going to be attracted to a pile that's, really hot. A critter might dig in and see that it's so hot they would recoil and not be interested. Or, fly larvae aren't going to lay eggs in only on the outside crust, maybe, but nothing really detrimental is going to get in the pile as long as it's nice and hot and active. And what I like to tell, our commercial clients is food waste collection programs, composting programs can be the answer to cleaning up a smelly garbage can or dumpster. You're really source separating the organics, and we, pick that up. Like some of our subscribers call us the compost fairies. They don't see us, they just leave their bucket out on the porch. We swap it out for a new one and it repeats. Vermicomposting is another cool food waste recycling method I recommend. I have a couple bins on the back patio. I'll show you in just a few minutes. But like worm castings, is the end product after you feed your worms food scraps. And worm castings are amazing fertilizer, rich with nutrients, and overall just like a very healthy fertilizer for your plants. Some people get into worms for, the fertilizer, the casting. Some people want to have like live bait that they can go and fish with, and other people just like to recycle their food waste because the worms, can eat about their body weight in a day. So if you have 1 pound of worms, that's, they'll chomp through like one banana peel or, some melon rind in about a day. They love soft foods because worms don't have teeth. They have like gizzards, like chickens. So if you feed them things like papaya, melon, cantaloupe, they really love that. And maybe to speed up their conditions have to be good. They can't be too hot. That's why I keep my worm bin in the shade. If the conditions are good, they're going to eat a lot faster than if they're not in good conditions. Also, worms, there's the rumor out there that they don't like citrus. They will eat oranges or citrus. It's just a little harder for them to chomp through, so it's one of the last things they'll eat. But also, like, in order for them to get more leverage and have like uh, an enzyme, I sprinkle a little sand into my worm bin, which helps them digest the food that they eat. And this is my last slide. I just want to say if anyone, any of the viewers are interested in our easy, convenient, pest and odor-free composting service, here's promo code for your first month free. We serve the majority of Orange County and Seminole County, and we do commercial programs for your office or workplace, as well as zero waste events. So now I'll open it up to questions. Stop the sharing.
Hey, Charlie.
Hey,
Hey, how's it going?
good,
Um,
good.
that was great. Thank you much. Yeah. The good information. We're excited to see what's going on outside. But I had one question coming in. If you do have any more, please let us know. But one person asked, can we do the vermicomposting in the city of Orlando compost bins, or do you need special bins for that?
I would not recommend doing them in the city of Orlando compost bins, just because they'll just dig under the bin and go wherever they please. Not to mention those bins are black plastic and get very hot, so you're gonna probably overheat the worms. But you could do them in your tumbler as long as your tumbler is in a shady spot and there is like some airflow. I have like holes drilled into my worm bins. So
Oh, cool. That's a good tip. Yeah.
yeah.
And I have a question actually. If you have one of the city of Orlando bins, would maybe drilling holes in the side help with that, or do you think that would help with the airflow, or would that just like kind of make water flow out a little bit more?
No, I think yeah, as long as the holes aren't huge where material is actually going to spill out, I think
Sure.
that would actually be a very smart solution just to bring more air into the pile.
Yeah, let it kind of flow through the sides because I know they only have like the holes right at the top and then right at the bottom, so you're not getting it all the way
Yeah.
through. So maybe a row around the middle would help. That's it for questions at the moment. But if you do have any more or anything specific, let us know. We're happy to. I'm happy to ask Charlie, and yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go in my back patio. Unfortunately, I think it's a little too dark out right now to show my compost pile. But Josh, do you know how to like flip your screen?
Um, you mean like to? Are you on your phone
I'm on my
or
Surface
laptop?
tablet. Yeah,
Oh,
laptop.
okay. You might have another camera to select in that cam mic settings there at the bottom. If
Okay.
there's another camera selectable, you might be able to just click on like rear facing or front facing, whichever one is not clicked. Um, if not, you
Okay.
might have to. Yeah. Oh, yep, that
Okay.
worked.
That worked. All right, great. So let me just demonstrate my worm bins. There's my cat, Ernie.
Hey, Ernie.
So yeah, the light isn't great back here, but I have two worm bins right now. My girlfriend just forced me to consolidate one. So I was getting, actually, I have three. There's the third. So yeah, I have a problem. I definitely have a problem. So here is kind of an example of this worm bin. And let me drag it more into the light. But you can kind of see like this tool. I recommend this tool because you can gently like move through the worm bin, and you'll see I have like pears, cantaloupes. Oh wow, they love this cantaloupe, and they're kind of gutting it, so they're just gonna leave behind the rind. But you know you there's it's pretty easy to start a worm bin, and the way I would recommend it, you start with some bedding. Worm bedding can be shredded paste, leaves, any kind of like organic material, but make sure it doesn't contain salt because they don't like salt. and they'll run for the hills. But after you get the bedding in there, you wet it down. I just use like a watering can, wet it down a little bit. And then I add, a bunch of food waste, a bunch of food scraps. And then I add the worms. And that, and then I might wet it down one more time because their skin is very sensitive to sunlight and dryness. They really like that moist climate. And by the way, like if you're interested in getting Florida red wigglers, which I sell them about a quarter pound for $10, and they're the ones that are the most pervasive to the Florida heat. They're the ones I would recommend, and they're the native earthworms as well. But also, some other tips about. I mean, I feel like a worm bin is just to kind of set it and forget it. It will attract ants and maybe fruit flies as long as, notice how my food waste is kind of on the top of the bin. Yeah, that's going to attract fruit flies, but it's in my back patio, so I don't care too much. If you didn't want to attract fruit flies, you would cover the exposed food waste with maybe a 1 or 2 inch layer of bedding, some kind of compost or shredded paper. And that would kind of deter any flies. So this is pretty easy thing. See if I can show you my backyard compost pile. You can kind of see it. See, I just prefer to have it nice and open. It's like an open bin. And I just felt it was pretty hot because I do get in there with a shovel every 3 days or so and try to mix it up, turn it. So yeah, I think overall that's about it. I'm happy to answer any more questions.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's cool how small of a footprint you can get with the worm bins. Most people could probably fit that on a apartment, even an apartment patio or like a small backyard area or something like that.
Yeah, like a
It could,
balcony or something.
yeah, that could work. That could
Yeah.
work well. We had one question about the Disney's anaerobic digester closed. When you mentioned that a little bit earlier, when do you know when it closed and why?
Yeah, it closed in July for good. So that's where the city of Orlando was bringing their food waste that they collect from commercial businesses and they collect at the farmers markets. Now they're hauling that food waste 2 hours west to this facility called Compost USA. But obviously, I'm hoping they'll go with O-Town Compost here in the near future.
Yeah,
But the reason that Harvest Power shut down is because well, I can't speak to their like management, but their biggest client was Disney, and that's where they're receiving the bulk of their feedstock. And when Disney kind of furloughed and died down a little bit during the pandemic, I think that was the nail in the coffin for
yeah.
them.
No,
Yeah.
I could definitely see that being a thing. And yeah, best of luck with the city, getting the city to come to y'all. That would be awesome. Keep it local. Eliminate that. All the the wasted
Yeah.
gas and emissions that you're doing just driving whatever 4 hours a big truck every day. If you can take
Yeah.
one of those out, turn that time down to 20 minutes, it would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, so
Definitely.
yeah, that'd be awesome. Do we have any more questions in the chat? If you do, please post those in the next minute or so. But if we don't have any, thanks a lot, Charlie. That was really informative. If you have any friends who are looking to compost, couldn't make it out tonight, just show them this video. It'll be on the on our OCLS videos YouTube channel and Facebook. So definitely check that out, and also check out O-Town Compost for all your needs. If you're having a little bit smaller stuff, you want it to, throw it in a bin and forget about it. It's great to have a local community composter there to help out with that. So I think it's great the work you're doing. So thanks a lot, and and best of luck
Yeah,
with
thank
that.
you so much. OCLS is doing a great thing, bringing all this great information to the public. So you guys are doing great work.
Oh, we appreciate it. Yeah. That would be it's really good. Yeah, we have a lot of great gardening events coming up as well. So if you're interested, I've got Fleet Farming is coming back in a couple weeks. They just spoke on Florida ecology, but we have Caroline from Ideas for Us and Fleet Farming coming back. I believe it's next week on
Nice.
the 13th in the evening, talking about starting up your home herb garden. So another great small footprint way to get into gardening and things like that. In addition to our gardening festival happening at the end of the series on the 24th. So for more events, if you're still looking to build that garden, there's still some time we can get it built up and have some great stuff happening. So thank you so much, Charlie and O-Town Compost, for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. And anything else you want to add? You want to? We got your link shared there in the chat for the for your
Yeah,
website. But
thank
yeah,
you so
anything
much.
else you want to add?
The only thing I would add is, you know, your voices really are important to shaping the future of Orlando. And if you reach out to your city or county commissioner, mayor, sustainability director, let them know how much composting really means to you, recycling the city's food waste, making sure it's not going to the landfill. They listen to these things, and policy advocacy is huge in the community composting industry. They actually just introduced a state bill that would require all food waste generators of up to a ton per week to have to recycle their organic waste. So that would include the majority of restaurants, caterers, and any big food waste generators. So I'm excited that that was introduced. I'm not sure if it'll pass. If it does pass, I'll be scrambling. So
Hey,
yeah.
yeah, that would be outstanding. Just especially just even like at the local level, just having initiatives like that are awesome. And yeah, we hope for the best. And yeah, you know, your voice is a great tool that you can all use, and everyone can use it for free. So use it for the things that matter the most. And yeah, again, we really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. And yeah, we'll all talk to you soon.
Take care, Josh. Take
Have
care,
a good one.
everyone.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to be the first to find out when we have new fun and informative videos for you. Orange County Library System is your place to learn, grow, connect.